This is the next video in the Historic Ordnance series. Now, what you are looking at and the information I'm going to give you is on the Czech PPMISB stake mine. However, the chances of you coming across an actual Czech production of this mine is 0. And I will get into the information on that. However, the chances of you coming across an improvised version of this mine is pretty high. And when I tell you the story on this mine, before I get into the technicals, you will understand why. Why you should know some on this mine. Now, this mine is a direct copy of a mine produced by Germany in World War II. An improvised mine that they came up with at the end of the war. That version is a improvised version of their copy of the Soviet POMZ stake mine. The Germans encountered them on the battlefield, thought that this is pretty good, we should copy this, this is effective. War continues on. Germany's getting bombed very heavily. Materials are getting harder to get a hold of. Production facilities are being destroyed. So they had to come up with an improvised version that could be produced in workshops and just anywhere that could do some basic work with tools. You could do it out in a farm field somewhere, in a barn if needed type situation. So what the Germans decided to do, they couldn't cast the cast iron bodies for the mines anymore, or as much as they used to, but they realized, hey, we could use concrete. So they took concrete, embedded metal fragments in it as the fragmentation, and cast those as the mine bodies. And that brought about the German Stockmine, or stick mine. Now, World War II ends. A lot of European countries, especially Eastern European countries, right off the bat, they take existing stocks, captured stocks of German equipment, and adopt it into their militaries for use. You get into the late 1940s, mid 1950s, they're now taking that stuff and making direct copies of it and designating it as their version of that mine, no longer the German designations for them. And then you go from the mid 1950s into the 1960s, they take those copies of the German mines and ordnance, they make their own versions, they evolve it with their own ideas, concepts, and manufacturing techniques, and then you end up with a ton of different versions, but it all tracks back. So that's what the Czechs did. They took those German Stockmine, they made their own copy of it, the PPMISB stake mine. The Yugoslavians did the same thing, and their version was the PMR2. Now, existing stocks of the PPMISB stake mine, they were declared obsolete by the Czechoslovakian army in 1973, removed from frontline service, put into storage for emergency wartime use. We advance forward in the history line. Soviet Union collapses. Cold War is over. The Czechoslovakia breaks in two. You have the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic. Both of those republics end up signing on to the Ottawa Anti-Personnel Landmine Ban Treaty in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And when they signed on to that treaty, they destroyed existing stocks of this concrete stake mine. However, there's probably examples like you see up here that are still in museums for reference. But since this is a simple mine, it was designed as an emergency wartime improvised mine, the chance of coming across this is pretty high. Now, technicals on this. The diameter is 3 inches. The height with this fuse on the R01 is 5.5 inches. Weight of the warhead packed, ready to go, is 4 pounds 10 ounces, of which you have a 2 2/3 ounce explosive block inside the mine, and the explosive used is TNT. Now, the primary fuse used on this in the tripwire mode is the R01. This is a copy of the fuse used by the German Army. However, it is not made out of metal. It is made out of Bakelite plastic. But it has metal internals, the spring, the striker, and the combat pin up here. Reportedly, the pressure required on the tripwire to pull the pin is between 2 and 33 pounds. Now, these mines can be employed as pressure mines if needed, if that's the only fuses that are available. When that is done, they were supposed to use the RO2 pressure fuse. This is the same fuse that's used in most of their anti-tank mines. Now, I could not find the actual pressure required to set off an RO2. I could find the pressure for the mines that they're put in, but not for the fuse itself. So I did a lot of looking, and I came across a fuse that is similar to this that the Czechs produced, and both of them are considered interchangeable in the anti-tank mines. And the pressure for that fuse, you probably figure it's going to be a similar range for the RO2. So we're looking at between 40 to 90 pounds of pressure to set this fuse off, most likely. Now, reportedly, the lethal range for these mines when they are in trip mode on the stakes is around 20 meters. When they're in the ground as pressure, there's no guess on that. So I'm going to go off of other anti-personnel mines, and I'll say the lethal range is probably within 5 meters of the mine. Okay, now installation instructions. I'll first give it to you for tripwire mode, and then I'll give you the instructions for when it's in pressure mode. For installation on tripwire, first thing you're going to do, you're going to inspect the mine body. You're going to inspect the stake, make sure it's usable. You're going to inspect the fuse. You're going to inspect the explosive charge. If everything passes, pack it up, take it with you to the installation site. When you get to the installation site, you're going to prep the area as needed. And that would include putting the stake in the ground at the location where you want to emplace the mine. Pound it into the ground, but make sure not to damage the end of the stake to the point where it's not going to insert into the body. Now, you're going to move on to prepping the mine itself. You're going to take the explosive charge. You're going to slide it into the mine body all the way up to the top. You're then going to take the mine body, attach it to the stake. Now you have to go through and prep the fuse. So what you're going to do on this, you're going to unscrew the bottom of the fuse here, which I'm guessing we're going to call a detonator holder. You're then going to insert a number 8 blasting cap, screw it back into the fuse. You will then screw that fuse into the top of the mine body. Make sure to locate the combat pin facing in the direction you want the tripwire. Go across the path, trail, road, wherever it is you're putting this mine. You're going to find an anchor point at that that location. That anchor point could be a fence post, could be a side of a vehicle. It could be a location where you're going to hammer a nail into a wall of a building. It could be another stake that you put in the ground. Find that anchor, prep that area as needed. You're then going to tie the tripwire off on there, run it back to the mine. Once you get back to the mine, you're going to attach it to this point, this little loop here, which you can see down here in the drawing. You're going to attach it to that on the R01 fuse. The mine is now armed, ready to go. So then go through, camouflage the mine, everything's ready to go. Now for removal on this mine, you know generally where the mine is at. Move up there, check the area for any other mines or booby traps that were put in to prevent someone from removing the mine. If you come across those, deal with them before you continue on. Area is clear. You're going to go up to the mine. You're going to follow the tripwire all the way back to the anchor point. Confirm that there is not a booby trap or another mine attached to the other end of that tripwire. You got it confirmed. Then you move back to the mine. Disconnect the tripwire from the mine. You will then unscrew the R01 fuse from the mine body. Set it to the side. You are then going to remove the mine body from the stake. Remove the charge from the mine body. You're going to remove the detonator from the R01 fuse. Then you're going to figure out a way on getting that stake out of the ground. Why do I count this as separate? Because it was very common to booby trap the stakes themselves. When in placing the mine, it was not uncommon, and this seems to be tracked back to the Viet Cong, if not the Soviets, to prevent deminers from removing the mines. When they would put the stakes in, they would put a fragmentation grenade right next to where the stake's going to go, stabilize that grenade, remove the pin, and then finish camouflaging that area so no one would know that that stake is booby trapped. So you're probably going to want to tie something off to the stake, back away, and then pull the stake out of the ground using a rope. Clean everything up and turn in all the pieces to the mine dump for possible reuse. Now, installation as a pressure mine. First thing you're going to go do is go through, inspect the mine body, inspect the fuse, and inspect the explosive charge. Passes inspection, you're going to take everything to the location where the mine's going to be employed. You're going to prep that area. You're going to dig a hole in the ground, and the hole will be to the depth of the mine body to probably here on the fuse. Just leave a little bit here, the very top of the fuse, sticking out of the ground, but you want to camouflage around that. Got your hole prepped. Take your explosive charge, put it inside the mine body. You might have to put a rock or something in there to keep the charge in place so it's not going to fall out. Put the mine body in the ground. Then you're going to prep the R02 fuse. You're going to unscrew the detonator holder from the bottom of the fuse body. You're going to attach the detonator and then screw the detonator holder back into the fuse body. Then you're going to attach, you're probably not going to screw in, you're just going to attach the fuse onto the mine by lowering the blasting cap into the mine. At that point, it's prepped and ready to go. There is no safety pin to remove from the fuse that I can find. Go through, bury with dirt up to about this point, and then camouflage over the top with some other material. Could be a bit of trash, could be some grass, some leaves, or whatever to conceal the very top of that pressure fuse. Now for removing it from pressure mode. You're first going to check around the area for any other mines or booby traps that could be around this one. You will neutralize them as you come across them as you're making your way to this mine. But the area is clear. You then locate the mine. You are going to check the mine for any possible anti-handling devices you weren't aware of. But this is a concrete mine. The chance of them attaching something into here is kind of low. But you always have to check. Check underneath the mine also to see if it could be sitting on top of some type of pressure release device, such as a Russian-made MS3 or MS4 or some other copy of that. If you find an anti-handling device or a booby trap, destroy the mine in place. Do not continue on with removal. But you do not find an anti-handling device anywhere on the mine. At that point, you're going to remove the fuse from the top of the mine. You're going to set that to the side. You're then going to remove the mine from the ground, separate the charge from the mine. You're then going to take the fuse, remove the detonator holder from the bottom, remove the detonator, screw the detonator holder back in, clean everything up, turn it into the mine dump for later reuse. Now, steps for the Yugoslavian PMR2 would be similar, using their versions of the fuses that I showed you. I did come across a note that the fuse that the Yugoslavians used is almost a direct copy of the RO1. So this is an improvised mine that was factory produced, was accepted officially into service, later withdrawn from service because they wanted something a little bit better. They didn't need the improvised mines anymore. As I said, the chance of you coming across an actual Czechoslovakian produced PPMISB stake mine is pretty much nil. However, the chance of coming across a home production version of this mine, because this is an improvised mine, coming across a home production, a guerrilla production, a resistance force production, or copy of these mines is pretty high. It is very likely. Now, for all my engineer brothers across the militia and patriot movements, always remember essayons.